All right, everyone. It's about time. Actually, it's a little bit past time. Just after 1 o'clock. Hi, everyone. Nice to see you here again for Techno Saturdays on 343 TV from 343 Labs, the music production school where I do instruction. I do synthesis and sound design and Ableton Live classes and, stuff like that. And of course, many of you are regulars here. You know what we're doing. We're here. Used to be 5 days a week or 6 days a week. Now we're down to, we're taking it a little more easy this season, right? We've got Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, I think is the schedule now, and the occasional special event on a weekend. And today is my day, generally focusing on techno and techno-related genres, especially electro, which I think some of you know is really close to my heart. I love doing that kind of stuff. Let's say hello to some of our regulars in the chat here. Who is here? John H. Kingston III is here. Nice to have you back. Enigmatic Onion, Lie Society. Hey, DJ Tony Islands. Thomas Berner and Daniel from IntelliGel is back. Nice to have you again, sir. Mod Scientists, looks like you're on Twitch. Thanks for hanging in there. I think most of our viewers are on YouTube, but we have a few on Twitch. We're going out there as well as Facebook. So lots of ways for you to catch our stream, whatever you happen to be doing. And also Pavel K2, hello 343 family. Yep, that's right. Family. Community is one of the reasons we do this. We started, at the beginning of COVID days, and, we just wanted to reach out and share what we do, grow the community around the school. We have actually now, we've been doing this all summer, but we have a Discord server. There's a link down below in the description. If you haven't already joined, go in and join, because it's a good place to, meet like-minded people who are making music. The instructors from 343 are on there occasionally, where you can get feedback for your tracks. We do special events like beat battles and sample challenges, things like that. So definitely join the Discord if you haven't already. And of course, if you're interested to know more about the school and what we do, we've got locations in Berlin and New York. Starting up, we've already got some in-person classes going again in New York. So that we're not quite normal yet, but we're getting back to normal in terms of how we operate the school. And of course, we all have all our online programs that we're doing and private lessons, personal kind of guidance if that's what you're into. So definitely reach out to us if you're interested. We've got also the links for the school down there in the description. And I would be remiss if I did not say, subscribe if you haven't already. Get the notifications. It's really helpful for us. And then if you want to know right away when we're going on, you'll get that notification. And then give us a reaction, however you're feeling. And I think we've recently got over 10,000 subscribers. I guess, what's our next goal? I imagine it's 20. So if you haven't, again, subscribed already, that's a really big one. So thanks to all of you for being back today. Now, let's bring in, without further ado, my guest for today. Hey, how's it going? This is Bergsonist. Nice to have you on the show. We've been just sort of hanging out a little bit and, getting our technical setup ready, and things are pretty solid, right?
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me. I don't usually do live sets, so it's live streams.
Mm-hmm.
So it's I'm excited.
Good.
It's a premiere.
It's a little, this is new for you. And, we talked about this, when I invited you to just sort of talk about how it works and what we would do and what we would talk about. And I really appreciate that you stepped up, because it is a bit of a challenge, and it's a different way of presenting yourself and being online in real time, and also just having a discussion about music and how you make music and gear and things like that. Usually, I mean, you've done streams before, but you've done like DJing or live, right?
Yeah, I've done one live stream, and my husband actually made this like 3D environment, so you can see me DJing in an island.
Nice.
So that was all.
I think
stage.
I remember this. There was like you probably had a green screen.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like I have that's why I have my little virtual like background thing going on here. I saw a clip, a little bit of it. I didn't get the whole set. Is it still available to watch?
Yeah, I put it on my YouTube.
Oh, great.
And it's also on Community Bread.
Mm-hmm. That's a label or an event?
That's I think a Twitch channel.
Oh, okay.
And I at first it was commissioned by Discwoman in January.
Okay.
And then I presented it again last week for the Saint Library fundraiser.
Okay.
So yeah, but now I'm kind of like trying to I want to work more on music videos, so I think I'm gonna start doing that more and
interesting.
experiment more with environments. Yeah.
No, I think that's a really like there's so much you can do in that direction. Creating new spaces to be in, and new environments to be creative in, and combining the visual element with what you're doing musically. And you've always kind of had that going on. Like I feel like you've got a strong sense of your concept and art and visual and that's really important to everything you do musically.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, for me, I've always loved design, so I always do that at the same time as music.
Mm-hmm.
But recently I got into 3D. I was actually, during the COVID, I was taking a class at SVA.
Nice.
So anyone can take classes, 3D classes, and the amazing thing is you can get access to the software for free.
What software were you using, if I can ask?
Cinema 4D.
Cinema 4D. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to make a mental note of that. 'Cause I'm sort of interested in this stuff as well. I would definitely have to take a class to do it. I'm interested in things like Unreal Engine. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah.
That looks amazing.
Yeah. Actually, that's what Greg did. So he's been experimenting during the pandemic with Unreal, and we collaborated. I tried to work on some 3D fragments on Cinema 4D, and I would export them as FBX files, and then we would use them on Unreal. But Unreal is really sick. Like, I think it's the future. There's so much you can do with it.
It's so complicated. But I've seen what some people can do with reactive visuals and music. Like everything is done in real time, and it's incredible. So a couple of things before we go on with the conversation. I neglected to mention, as usual, we have a giveaway every week for 343 TV. And this week we are giving away a Decapitator plugin from Soundtoys, which is a really excellent saturation distortion plugin. So if you haven't already, there should be a link in the chat here to enter for a chance to win Soundtoys Decapitator, and we'll announce the winner in the chat. And last week I forgot, but this week I'll try not to forget to announce the winner in the stream while we're going on. And then also, while we're talking, let's start putting on some of your music. You sent me a bunch of really great tracks, and we picked 4 just to kind of get started with. Also, I'll mention that the intro music today was one of yours. I really like that kind of ambient soundscape. That was really nice. But these tracks I've got here are a little bit more on the techno side, which is, kind of what we're all about here. Anyway, so what we were going to kind of talk about today was, the title is Breaking Out of Limitations, of Hardware Limitations. And I thought that's something that you brought up when we were getting ready for the show, and I thought would be interesting to start talking about. Because, nowadays there's such a trend to go away from computer-based production, or only in the computer, only in the box, DAW-less, hardware-focused, modular-focused. And that you were talking about how you felt like there were things you wanted to do with music, with your hardware, and you felt like you were being held back a little bit by the limits of your instruments. And so I just wanted to sort of get your take on that. Like, what was it that you were running into with hardware that you feel like you need to do more?
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that like I encounter a lot is the structure of the pattern. It's so boring. Like I would just like try to make a song, and then it's always the same kind of beat structure, and I can get very quickly bored by it. So I use a lot delay to actually create like to break that structure.
Right.
But yeah, most of the time I'm struggling to just feel inspired.
Interesting.
Inspired by
the
tool.
So you're talking about, it sounds like you're talking about a little bit about the sequencing, like how the timing works, how the patterns work, and how to make things more interesting and more varied over time and less repetitive.
Yeah.
So, and it depends, I think, on the hardware that you're using, right? So tell us a little bit about like what you're working with.
Well, I work mostly with the rhythm, and also I worked a lot with the ER1. It's not part of my setup right now, but I used to work a lot with it, and the Yamaha DX200 and Korg Minilog XG. So yeah, it's kind of it depends on. I mean, my setup is very small, so I try to just like bring like the minimum, the thing that I really need, and yeah, the rhythm is actually something like I've started with the rhythm. I love it, but I'm thinking maybe getting something else just to change a bit my routine. I tried Ableton during the summer because I worked on a film soundtrack, and I found it interesting, but not as exciting. Like I think having something physical.
Okay, so it's not so much about hardware having in general, it's maybe the specific instruments that you're using.
Yeah.
Now I just noticed in the chat, Riley Gein, I think I have your name right, talks about Electron sequencers being great for adding variation. Now you are using Electron stuff, and we're actually, one of the things we're going to do, today is you use a Digitone, and I have a Digitone that I barely touched, to be honest. And I thought it would be kind of fun to like talk a little bit about what we're doing with those and pros and cons of the workflow with Electron and the sounds and things like that. But so you're using Electron, and what have you found limiting in terms of that workflow and then in terms of finding the variation that you want?
Well, it's weird, but like when I started using my Electron machines, I would just try to find the most basic way of using it, and then once I have that system figured out, I just don't want to I just get confused by all the technical aspects, so I don't want to push it further, so I just ignore it. And I feel that more you ignore, I started encountering a lot of issues, so I had to work around those issues with my own system. And I think that's my battle in music in general, is to like for me, music, it has to be fun. I don't as soon as it's work or it's stressful, I don't do it.
Got it.
So I think finding that like just milieu between the fun aspect of it and how much knowledge you need in order to operate is a struggle. But maybe one of these days I need to just sit down and have a nice drink and
just dive in.
Read the manual, just like,
I agree.
It's a journey.
It is a journey. And then, I've been doing electronic music for a pretty decent amount of time, and I've worked with hardware and I've worked only in software. Actually, in recent years, almost all in the box. I'm so into just using Ableton Live. It's become my instrument for the most part, but I still incorporate hardware sometimes. And, I have the desire to play with the new toys, you know know about gas gear acquisition syndrome. It's kind of it's a funny idea from people who are really into synthesizers, and like if you have gas, it means you always want to get the newest gear. You want to keep getting new toys to play with.
Yeah.
And I feel that too. And I bought the Digitact, and I wanted to get to know the Electron workflow a little bit, and the Digitact is a good place, and the Digitone also is a good place to start because it's less complex than say like an Octatrack, you know,
Yeah.
and it does take some getting used to. Like, it's different than what I was familiar with from other types of hardware, you know, especially starting out like with 80s and 90s gear and, you know, Roland synths and drum machines. It's very different.
Yeah.
And it feels awkward. And I realized that it requires practice. Like, you know, when I was 4 years old, I got a violin and I played through elementary school into high school. And if you don't practice, you don't get good. And it's the same thing with any synth or drum machine or workstation. You got to get to know the instrument. So it really comes down to that, to practicing. But then sometimes the interface just doesn't click.
Yeah.
And, you know, I prefer an instrument that has more one-to-one control, where I don't have to remember too many key combinations or button combinations, right? I see it, I turn the knob, I press the button, it does what I want.
Exactly. Yeah.
But it's hard to find the right thing, especially also if you're trying to keep your gear set up small. Like, gear that has lots of knobs and buttons on it is usually big.
Yeah.
So
yeah, yeah, definitely. I feel you. I mean, also like for example, with the Adobe Premiere, that's also something that like I have the same. I just can't learn the interface. It's just so.
So what are we gonna do about it? And that's sort of part of the goal of today, is to like try to think about ways to get out of that. Like, if you are using gear and you're kind of stuck by the limits of the gear or the workflow of the gear, what are ways that you can get what you want? And
I think
go ahead.
Maybe, you know, one thing that works well for me, it's if I'm with a friend and they show me in real time how they use it.
Sure.
I think having that kind of like a show and tell, not show and tell, but showing aspect from someone you know is actually, it would be great. Just someone who show you like shortcuts, like tricks.
Right.
So you don't have to read the whole manual. But yeah.
You don't like reading manuals, do you?
I used to. When I had the ER1, I spent my days, or I had the Nordrum.
Those are great.
Yeah, I loved it. And I was reading the manual and I didn't know anything but synthesis. And I loved it. But I feel now I'm just so impatient. Like, when I have a piece of gear, I just keep working on it and try things. And
that works too. It takes longer, I think, to do trial and error and just sort of figure it out as you go. But then you might stumble across things accidentally that are interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
This is another. I put on another track in the background, and I think that the last one and this one are tracks where you used the Digitone. I'm guessing you used it for the bass line in this song.
Yeah.
And we'll turn it up a little bit for a second. Kind of nice. Sort of a little bit of a classic Detroit feel to it, right?
Oh, thanks. Thank you.
Well, you know, always an inspiring sound to me. Like,
yeah.
I'd be lying if I said I never tried to make a track that sounded like that. You know?
Yeah.
It doesn't always have to be new.
Yeah. For me, like, I remember there was a track by Juan Atkins with the vocal. It was like I believe Octave 1? No, it's Juan Atkins.
Okay.
And
maybe we can look it up.
Yeah, it's just like one of my favorite track, and it's funny that like all my music I'm inspired by like all the old school Detroit, like they are like geniuses in my opinion. And
I think it's Octave 1, I believe.
Octave 1, yeah, I believe. Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I love that track, and it's funny that like when you don't know how to play piano, you play always the same chords.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever thought about taking piano lessons or something like that, or learning a bit more about music theory?
Yeah, definitely. I want to learn piano because I feel like my melody sounds the same. Kind of. But
I understand that, and actually, you know, a lot of times when I teach, it's fairly common and this comes up whether it's in like an Ableton Live course or a synthesis course. People are looking for like a new thing to make their music better. And it's not unusual for people to think, oh, this new synth is going to get me what I want, or this new technical thing about the DAW is going to get me what I want. But when in fact what it really is musical understanding, whether it's melodies and chords and harmony or rhythm or just how, or orchestration, how to fit different types of sounds together. Like sometimes that's what's missing. It's like, no, your sounds are fine, but maybe like things are out of tune and you didn't hear it, or you're playing chords and melodies that are in different keys and they don't quite work together. And that's, so it isn't always the hardware limitations or the synthesizer limitations or the DAW limitations. It might just be knowing more about music.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, but at the same time, I think it can be a barrier, because I know a lot of people who are musicians and they have walls, like they can't break that wall sometimes. So it's kind of, I don't know, in both ways it's hard to find the just milieu.
Sure.
But when I was like, I think 5 years ago, I was at the new school and I had this class. We were taking like it was like music theory, but we were more focused on sound. So we used Max MSP, and we were trying to experiment with that. And to be honest, that was great. Like I felt like I learned things, but I never used that knowledge in my music at all. Like
interesting. So you have all this awareness of how sound works.
Yeah.
But it's not applied creatively.
Yeah, we did so many like readings of like text and listening session of composers and stuff. And when I make music, I think it's great. Maybe it informs your unconscious and it gives you some sort of like aesthetic, like tune your aesthetic. But to be honest, I remember hitting walls. Like you can quickly feel doubt when you have that sort of way of thinking when making music, and you would be like, oh, this is not perfect, I need to spend much time, and then you never make music. So
that is definitely a really important balance to find, like the knowledge, but also sometimes not knowing something is better, because you don't know what rule you're breaking, you just do it.
Yeah, definitely. That's why I think kids, like, they make awesome music. Like if you give to a kid a machine, they can make so much awesome things because they're not conditioned to do it a certain way. And it's nice to have that kind of naiveness.
Absolutely. I mean, when I was starting out, I really knew very little about electronic music, and I had to kind of learn how to break the traditional musical rules to get to the cool like techno stuff I wanted to do. Like it wasn't about chords and scales and melodies necessarily. I mean, it was really about like making an interesting noise and rhythm that has feeling and emotion in it, but it's not necessarily following like the rules of harmony, or pop music or rock arrangement structure or whatever. So there's not necessarily, you're making a hypnotic techno track, there's no verse chorus, that kind of thing. It's become formulaic now. Like you have all these DJ Tool tracks that have an intro and then a first section and then a breakdown and a build up and then a drop, and then in every arrangement's the same, and it's very cookie cutter. It's utilitarian music and it works, but it's now that's the thing that I have to fight against, because it's so easy to like lay out a beat and a bass line and a couple of weird chord stabs and some noise and whatever and a sample, and then it's all very cut and paste, this many bars and then there's a break and then this many bars and then ending. It becomes that is now a limitation. It's so ingrained in my mind after making techno and house and different styles of dance music and being a DJ. Like in order to be more creative, I have to forget that. So that's definitely
how do you do it? Like, so when, like, is it you always like how, like what's your first step, like when you try to make a song?
Mine?
Yeah.
Well, nowadays it tends to start with the synthesis and the sound design, because I really want to find like new sounds to play with and not use the same sounds. and then let that inspire the direction of the writing and the arrangement. And so it's a way of, also that combined. Sorry, I just interrupt my own thought, but yeah, just getting started with the synthesis and sound design and letting that inspire the musical idea, and then let how the sound works and playing with the sound over time start to inspire the arrangement, and not try not to like say, okay, I'm going to do a melody for 4 bars and then repeat it, but let the sound and playing with the sound and modulating the sound, whether I'm using hardware or doing automation in the DAW, like letting that be expressive, and then let that lead what the musical changes.
Yeah.
So that's one way to do it.
Yeah, you're right. It's kind of like, I mean, that's why it reminds me of like Detroit, like techno. Like the thing that is inspiring is you feel the emotion. Like you don't feel like that formula. Like it's not a formula. It's like you feel it, the emotion, and maybe that's why people connect to it.
Sure.
And many people connected to it, and I feel that the emotion is nice when you improvise as well.
Exactly.
For example, when I make music, I remember one day I was with a person who actually record multitrack each machine.
Yeah, that's how Heidi is doing it. Like last week we had Heidi Sabertooth, and she showed how she has her whole live hardware. Yeah, she writes everything in hardware, but she records everything separately in Ableton Live, so she can go back and edit or mix it or change, but it's still capturing the improvisation.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's definitely like I mean I think that's what brings emotion. Maybe I'm wrong, but for me, improvising in the moment have something that's, I don't know.
Absolutely.
You can't recreate.
But again, it's a balance to find, because there are some things that work really well in improvisation, and then there are other things that maybe need to be more pre-planned or arranged. And that's also something that I like to do is, I work in the box so much and I do so much editing of the arrangement on the timeline that it's really important for me to combine that or have that influenced by what I do in terms of improvisation. And I think I was just thinking our conversation has kind of gone away from talking about the technical elements of gear, and that's telling, because again, a lot of times the limitations aren't the hardware or the instrument itself, it's your kind of creative process. So, it could be, you're trying to break out of these limitations, but it's more than just what the Electron workflow is, or how the Digitone works, or how the analog rhythm works.
Yeah, definitely. I remember, so my first machine was the Electrab ER1.
Right.
And recently, I just took it back from my closet, and I was like, okay, let's try it with a new mindset.
Sure.
And I did things differently, and the limitation is actually our brain. And
absolutely.
Maybe we need. It's nice to have knowledge, like to learn few tricks and stuff, but then it all comes down to you and how you're gonna operate all that information.
Absolutely. Let's look at the chat really quick and see what people are saying. Exit says Electron is the best. Well,
cool.
I think it's up there for sure. We like Electron, but also I find there are some things about the way they work that are not ideal for me, but you could get through it. I can still make cool sounds with it, and we'll try. Let's see. Riley is trying to build up a live setup that's separate from a studio setup. Yeah, that's challenging, because then you have your studio setup, and then you want to get all this other gear. I think we're referring back to the whole gear acquisition syndrome idea. Riley definitely has that, and I feel you. We have a question from Exit. If you use Ableton MIDI effects to program hardware, and I think probably the answer is no, because you were saying you were only just getting into using Live, the software, so you may not have gotten into that deeper stuff, but that Live can do. But that is actually another interesting way to create variation and change in your arrangements, especially if you're going for like random or organic or like probability, kind of having things happen or not happen. Ableton Live has a lot of tools to do that, where you can have a simple pattern that's a bar, 2 bar, or even 4 or 8 bars long that is constantly evolving and changing. And it's easier. You can do this directly on an Electron box too. There's probability in an Electron workflow. You can have a step happen or not, and you can have different steps modulate the sound, right? You can have parameters change over time and even randomly. I would say it's very powerful, and it's not rocket science to make it work, but it's a little less intuitive for me coming from the DAW environment. And I feel like I have more control over whether I want it to be random or not in Ableton Live. So, I can set up a situation where things are changing over a long period of time, sort of randomly within limits, so it doesn't go too wrong. Sometimes when things are set up for probability, or random, that it'll just play the wrong note or the wrong tone or the wrong rhythm, and you need to be able to control the limits of that. And I find that easier to do in the DAW. But that also could just be my lack of practice and unfamiliarity with the Electron workflow. So.
Yeah. Honestly, I'm curious to try it. I've never. I multi-tracked once in my in Greg's studio, my husband's studio, and he has like this old recorder multi-tracker, so you don't have to use a computer.
Mm-hmm.
And that was fun. And actually, the track was released on the last album, but I want to try this MIDI more. That could be interesting.
Well, yeah, and that's we're about halfway through now. We're gonna start switching over into playing around with our Digitone. We each have one. I've got mine hooked up in live with Overbridge, which keep your fingers crossed that it's going to work properly, because there's a question here from Leprechaun Capital. What a name! In what way are some things in Electron not ideal for you? Well, one of them is, Overbridge is amazing. I think it's great that they're doing that. It is a little bit unstable. I really want to be able to have total remote control over my hardware from my DAW and integrate it deeply into how I work with the DAW. Overbridge lets me do that with Digitone or whatever, and it could be an issue on my side with hardware stability or the USB bus getting overloaded or something. But I've often found that the instrument will just disappear, and I won't be able to access it. It'll just all of a sudden the audio will stop, or the MIDI clock will stop, or something, and that. I wouldn't want that to happen in a live environment, certainly. And then it's a little frustrating in the studio. But then, again, it could be my personal computer configuration that is contributing to that. I haven't shot that yet. And then as far as the way the sequencing works, it's fairly straightforward, especially on the Digitact and the Digitone. There's only 8 tracks, and it's pretty limited. I think it really has to do with the menu system and memorizing the button combinations. And of course that comes with practice. I probably shouldn't complain about it too much without having used it in depth, like the way some people have. Of course, I'll get more out of it the better I know it. But it feels like if I get on, a more traditional step sequencer and more sort of one-to-one control kind of instrument, I feel more comfortable. And maybe it's just me being an old dog, and it's harder to learn new tricks. But I get to what I want faster with more simple, straight-ahead workflows rather than more complex workflows. So it's not necessarily Electron specifically. I think it's just a more, a more complex user interface makes it less fun for me. So I think that that's what you were saying earlier a little bit.
Have you been interested in the cycle? Is it the cycle, Electron cycle?
I mean, those are even more simple than. I mean, they're very similar and even more stripped down. I've looked at those. There's the sample version, and then there's the FM version. I'm very tempted by the FM version because that's one of my favorite types of synthesis. I mean, I traded my Digitact for a Digitone because I used it so little, and I really use my drum programming and sampling is on the computer for the most part. So it made more sense to have a synth as opposed to a sampler as for hardware for me. And also it's FM and it's cool and it's a unique interface. And I actually like the synth part of Digitone a lot in terms of making FM accessible and a little easier to use. It's great. It's really like the sequencing, arranging workflow that I'm less practiced with. I guess, and the other thing is just sort of keeping track of projects and patterns and songs. My mind is so stuck in the DAW way of working in terms of like, saving and arranging, and it's going back to this sort of pattern-based thing is like, when outside of in a live environment, it makes more sense because you're just switching between patterns in real time, and it's really, again, I have to go back to saying I need to practice more with my Electron device.
Yeah,
cool.
It's weird. I was feeling the same. I never, for a long time I didn't have that gear. Gas. Is it gas?
Gas. Yeah. Like gear acquisition syndrome.
Yeah, but recently, I don't know why I was interested in the cycle, because I read people saying it's very intuitive and it's easy to use and it's fun, so I was kind of tempted to do that. But then I'm like, I have this Digitone, you just have to sit down and just work.
Well, speaking of that,
so,
let me just pause again to say we're about halfway through. Don't forget to join. This is your last chance to join in the drawing for the Decapitator plugin. So, if that link is in here, should be, click that link and join the giveaway, and we'll be announcing that very shortly. And I want to make sure we get into some Digitone action before we run out of time. It's already, I told you that time would fly. It's already almost 1:40. So let's see what you are doing. I'm going to bring you up so we can see your setup. You've got your analog rhythm there. You've got your Digitone. That's all plugged into a mixer. I see your DX200. You and Heidi have DX200s, and I'm a little bit jealous. I really want to get one of those. They're just, when you find them now, they're overpriced. It's
really?
Yeah,
Whoa.
they've become a little bit more coveted now. But I'm just, again, I really like FM synths. So speaking of, Simple Sam mentioned that the Korg Op 6 looks great, and I agree. I don't think I need to spend $700 on a keyboard right now. I would love a module version of it for a little bit less. That'd be great.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need any more. I love synths with no keyboards because, again, I'm mainly controlling them from my computer with a MIDI controller. I don't need more keyboard space taking up my desk space,
Yeah, definitely. I feel that.
Cool. So let's have a listen to what you're working on a little bit.
Sure. So yeah, I just have some sounds. Oh, sorry, I'm too loud.
It's okay. No, don't worry. It's good that they can hear you.
Okay. Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I just have some sounds that I worked on a long time ago, and for example, this one, I don't know, it's called Dreamer. I changed it a little bit.
Do you like to do sort of to modify presets and find your own way from the preset, or do you start from scratch?
It depends. I like the preset sometimes because it just gives you a limitation, and then I can just change everything and make it cooler without too much thinking.
Got it.
But yeah, this one, I think I remember I was more interested in like making very like tiny fragmented sound.
Sure.
That I could was it the delay? Yeah, I use actually a lot of chorus and reverb on this one. So I kind of like how do you say, sorry, like you take one sound and you just work with like the tiny, like the fragmented aspect of it.
Okay.
And damn, I forgot the word.
Maybe it's a language thing. Like you might be thinking of it in French or something.
Yeah.
Is there a French word that fits? Maybe we'll know it.
Yeah. Isolation. Okay, isolate. Sorry. Yeah, I isolate the sound.
That's also
and I work on it.
English.
Yeah. Exactly. Maybe because I'm fasting today. That's why
Oh,
I don't have wires.
I see.
On me. But yeah, it's kind of like I just take one sound and try to isolate it and just work with it until it creates some kind of interesting sound in my ear.
Okay.
And yeah, for this one, I played with the LFO as well. So basically, what I do when I play live or when I record a song is I have all my tools ready, all my sounds ready, and then I play them live.
Got it.
So I record in one take.
All right.
And most of the time I have to do it 3 times because it's not.
So you're
quick.
recording straight into what? You're not using a computer.
Yeah, I use my Zoom.
Wow.
As you can see, old
Nice.
Zoom. And yeah,
That's all you
plug
need.
it to you plug it to this mixer.
Mhm.
Very
No, I really
straightforward.
I appreciate the straightforward setup, and I think it's also good for people to see this. Like, you don't have a huge mixing board with a ton of tracks and tons of effects all over the place. You're just using a few instruments that you know. You're going into a small Mackie mixer, and you're using the effects built into the instruments, and you're just letting it be what it is. So that's kind of liberating, actually. Those are limitations which are helpful for being creative. On the flip side of bumping up into the, sometimes the limitations of the instruments might be keeping you from getting to a musical result that you want. But at the same time, working within those limitations can be really freeing because you're cutting out a bunch of complexity.
Yeah, I mean, I'm lucky because I also have access to a studio with a mixer and everything. But to be honest, I never make music there because there's too much possibilities.
Have you thought about doing more like multi-tracking instead, so that you could do your regular workflow at home, but then capture each element separately and then take it out to that studio so that you can sort of mix it, put just different effects, take it in a new direction? Because that's another way. That's another way of breaking out of these hardware limitations. Maybe you can use your workflow that you're comfortable with, but then also, doing the way Heidi. You should watch the video last week. Doing her setup would be great for you. It would just involve, instead of and you still don't need a computer to do it. You could there's some new mixers that have built-in multi-track recorders. There's a Tascam one, Behringer makes one. There's all from cheap to expensive. There are really good mixers they're digital, and you can do multi-track recording onto just like a memory card.
Oh, okay.
And then you can copy that onto your computer and send, or take it with you to a studio, and they can copy, and then you could have another dimension of audio and effects processing and editing to take it to that next step. I think that'd be a great way for you to break out of your current limitations.
Yeah, definitely. I'm interested in that. Definitely. It's actually an issue because I have a lot of vocal tracks. And since I record everything in one take.
Right. Recording the vocals separately is really important.
Yeah.
I mean, you can sample yourself and then edit the sample and then mix it in and then record that live. But I think it would be better if you wanted to do that separately, right?
Yeah, but the other issue, it's like, music is so... how do you say? I'm confronted between that aspect and being like, let's do it to push everything to the next level and learn and do this.
Okay.
But at the same time, if I do that, I'm not gonna like music. That's the thing.
Right.
It has to be. It has to be like brushing your teeth. It has to be easy. That's why for me, when people ask me tips, like honestly, for me, anyone can do music.
Got it.
Like I do music, but I don't think like I can talk as a resource.
I think your ideas and your concepts and your artistic vision is all just as valid as what when I'm teaching synthesis or sound design or specifics about how a DAW works. They're equally important. So don't discount yourself as an instructor or someone who could be a mentor, because you have a lot of good ideas. And also, you have been successful. You've gone out there and put your music and your art in the world, and people are responding to it, and you're getting noticed for it. That alone is something valuable to talk about. I love this sound. It's definitely starting to hypnotize and worm its way into my brain. Let's see what else you've got going on a little bit. And maybe I don't know if you got that machine drum going. Not the machine drum, the analog rhythm.
Yeah, actually, I want to buy the mono machine drum.
Yeah.
But it's hard. It's really hard to.
That's heavy.
To find. Yeah. Is it too loud?
Hey, let it be hardcore. I don't know.
Okay. So as you can see, I use the rhythm as my drum. Sometimes I use the GX200, sometimes I use the ER1, and I just experiment with everything, and then when I feel something is happening, I plug my recorder and then play live.
Got it.
And change live.
Yeah, I mean
some parameters.
That's always the way to do it. Like, and that's the way I started. Everything was live to tape or live to DAT.
Oh no! Whoa, nice.
Jim Jones in the chat. Jim Jones says everyone wants a machine drum.
Yeah.
They are hard to find.
Why is it so expensive?
Because they're great.
It's because of Sophie. Maybe that artist who passed recently. I think a lot of people started buying the mono machine because of it. I don't know, but yeah. Yeah, they cost I think $5,000. It's crazy on Reverb.
That's insane. You could, that's all. Yeah. That's a Roland TR 909 is like 5,000 to 6,000 now.
Whoa!
And that doesn't do half as much, you know, like it's.
Yeah, wow. Insane, yeah.
I like this extra little melody you brought in.
Thanks.
And
so it's hi-hats that I.
But they're like musical hi-hats. You've turned them into a melody.
Oh wow! Thanks. So another thing I love with the Digitone is to play melody like.
I got it. Well, it's got a little keyboard on there. Have you ever tried plugging a MIDI keyboard into it to actually play piano style?
No, I've never.
You should do that.
I have to try.
Oh yeah. Being able to play more notes, like with all your fingers, is really great. And I know that you can record into the sequencer. It doesn't have to be quantized. So it captures your timing. You can quantize it after, but when you record it straight in, if you don't have quantizing automatically on, it'll keep your in-between timing, your human timing, which that could be another way for you to sort of break that limit of having everything being perfectly stepped. And I know also in electron sequencing, you can pick a step and shift it earlier or later in time. That's great, but that's one note at a time. I like to play rhythms and melodies in real time and have a human feel, and it's just remember that the sequencer can capture that, whether it's a drum pad or a keyboard. You could record rhythms that are a little, because it sounds like you like grooves that are a little bit off kilter sometimes, like not perfect mechanical beats, but have a little bit of organic groove to them. So you should try plugging a MIDI keyboard into it.
Yeah. So can you plug a synth? Do you think I can plug the Minilog?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
You could use the Minilog as a controller for the Digitone.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you. That's a great idea. I didn't know about it.
No, I kind of thought like we both know different things about our hardware, and we're learning from each other today. That was part of the idea as well, because I have my Digitone here, which I'm just starting to get to know, and but I know some things like I just told you, but I have never like made a whole track with one. So
really?
where you have.
Yeah, it's kind of. Yeah, it's weird. I don't know. Like for FM, definitely, I love the Digitone, and it brings very nice sounds. But yeah, sometimes it's I don't like using it, and I use the Minilog for FM.
Oh, the Minilog does have different oscillators, right? You can do FM in the Minilog.
Yeah, and the nice thing that I love with it is you can import sounds to it.
No, that's amazing that they have this sort of open architecture for the digital oscillator. So like other developers are making oscillators for the XD. I have I have the non-XD Minilog, and I kind of wish I could trade because I really like the XD's capabilities. Both would be great. There is a module version, right? There's a version of that with no.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's on my gas list.
Nice.
For sure.
Maybe you can take it at the library.
Right.
That's actually
I think I'm not the target of Heidi's synth library. I'm not the people that I can afford to buy one. Like let other people who need it go first.
Yeah, no, but the nice thing, like the thing that I feel like is missing is to borrow people's gear. You know, it's like sometimes I want to do something, but I don't want to buy. You know, necessarily. I just want to experiment with it a little bit and
Maybe we
record.
can trade sometime. You can borrow something from me, and I'll borrow your DX200.
Yeah, sure.
That would, because I've never played with one. I've only heard it, and I love how it sounds.
Really, yeah. It's, you know, it's funny. Like when I started, I didn't know anything about the GX200, and as soon as I heard it, like I took it from Greg because he used to tour, and he would tour with this and the bus.
Okay, it's like a 404.
Yeah, bus 404.
It's like a sampler.
303.
Okay, but it's a little sampling looping box, right?
Yeah, it's a sampler, but because I don't know, he was interested in a very tiny little setup.
Right.
He would just take that, and since now I I took it on my studio, but yeah.
That's nice of him to let you
have
use
to
it.
just yeah, his music is really sick. Like he's also into FM. He made actually long time ago Reactor FM plugin, and he wanted to make actually a synthesizer, but then he. Yeah, I highly recommend to check his music, Greg Z.
Greg Z. Okay, I'm gonna do that.
And but you know, I feel like he's now in his 40s, so he feels like music is far. But I push him to actually keep making music because it's, you know, it's who you are. It's so important.
I think I was talking to Abe Duque about, you know, we're an older generation and we've been doing this a long time, and how to find and maintain sort of our drive and our inspiration and, you know, energy to like keep going forward and doing new things and not just repeat ourselves from the past, which is so easy to do.
Yeah.
I can go back and say, oh, that track worked. I could try to do that again, but it will be missing the whatever spark of inspiration and energy that I had when I was 20 something. You know, it will never be the same. So I have to find new ways. So I definitely, you know, encourage him.
Yeah.
to
yeah.
do
I
it.
mean, to be honest, for anyone who's making music right now, it's so hard. Like when, you know, you make music and no one listens to it, like you would release on Bandcamp and no one would buy it, and you feel like, why am I doing it? But
you have to want to do it for yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, just keep doing it. It's a practice.
Right.
And even if you know, it's your own. It reminds me. Do you know Vasuka?
Vasuka?
It's he's a video pioneer.
I'll have to
He
check that
died.
out. Oh.
But him and his wife, like they were actually continuing producing artworks until they die.
Wow.
And that's their life. And I feel like when you make music and you have to value your own artistic practice as well.
Sure.
Like not just like to feed the industry and be part of like this trendy wave of artists. I don't know. I think it's good to just keep faith, just keep working on your thing.
That's good advice. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
We're almost at the end. Can you believe it? It's 1:55. We've got a few more minutes.
Okay.
If you don't mind, I wouldn't mind taking a look at my Digitone for a second, and just to check out sort of a different way of working with it. And you were saying you don't use Overbridge. You haven't used the software control for Digitone. And I mean, and it's amazing that they do this. That I don't know. I can't think of another hardware manufacturer that has this deep of a interaction. Someone in there in the chat, if there's something else. I mean, I know like the Roland stuff, you can route audio from your device and MIDI at the same time into your DAW. It shows up as an audio interface. The way they do it with Overbridge is very different. And I like how they do it. The stability of it is an issue, as I mentioned, but hopefully mine is working. There's my my Digitone here, which is it's like it's a little embarrassing. I've had it for months and I only have made like a couple of sounds. I was actually using this with one of my private students who is hardware based and wanted to learn more about synthesis, and he was working with electron stuff. So I decided that okay, that's a good excuse for me to get to know it better and do some FM synthesis with this. So, but let's see if this is still working. Okay. one of my issues with it is that I've been trying to get things in sync. I've got this pattern playing with, and it's sort of like a kick bassline lead combo. It's just something you could do in synthesis and with techno, is you can have one synth do multiple instrument parts in a way in terms of the rhythm. So that's sort of, you can hear that it sounds a little out of sync. So that's an issue I was having, is getting the Digitone to play nice with the clock from my Ableton Live. And I'm using the LFO to do a quarter note, basically. And so when the LFO2 is on trigger, it's restarting with each note. When it's free, the rhythm is different. And actually, this is the way I like it. So basically, sort of the kick-like sound we're hearing is this envelope doing a pitch modulation. You can hear if I reduce the depth down to 0, you don't get that as much of that punch. There's still a little bit of percussiveness because I'm also using really short envelope decay times on the operators. That's with no envelope at all. And this is with the synced LFO on a quarter note. Doing, like, now it's percussive again. So this is what I was playing with earlier today, and just trying to make a groove just with one sound. And that's operator A bringing in higher harmonics. Speaking of harmonics, this is one of my things about the Digitone that I like, is you have this control for harmonic content in the waveforms. It lets you morph the waves. And, normally with most FM synths, your wave shape doesn't change over time when you're not doing FM. And if I have operator A all the way down and operator B all the way down, theoretically we're just hearing a sine wave. And there is no, the sound of the Digitone, it's got character, it's got saturation, there's this drive. There almost never is a perfectly clean sine wave. It's always got some a little overtone in it, especially when you have the drive on. Like that's turning it more into like a square wave. But then there we go. This is letting me, when you go negative on the harmonics, it's changing the shape of the waveform on the carrier. So that's already a lot of amazing tonal change that you can play with in a track. See if I can find it on the... I'm still slow finding my parameters. Harmonics, there it is. Yeah, when you go positive, it changes the shape of the modulating operators, and when you go negative, it changes the shape of the audible carrier. I just recently figured out that holding down the function key makes it jump between the high, middle, and low values. So if I wanted to go quickly back to 0, I hold down function and turn the knob. I know that's a super basic electron thing that you should know right away, that I only just learned like months after I bought this thing. Let's see, where am I? All right, these are the levels for the modulators. This thing needs a kick drum and a hi-hat for sure. But again, the idea was to create a sequence that already has that thump in it, as if there was a kick already.
Oh yeah.
I have the oscillate operator B creating noise. It's creating like a hi-hat kind of a sound. Or just like a percussive snap on top. So I like to approach, this is one of the things I love so much about FM synthesis, is you can get into those tiny little details and you can very quickly and easily make something complex that grooves. And, as far as breaking out of, just to tie this all together again, hopefully, like breaking out of the hardware limitations. I mean, okay, for me, it's this software interface. For me, one of the limitations of Electron workflow is menu diving and switching views and having a tiny little screen, and I can only see 4 things at once. So it's genius on their part to do an interface that looks like a plugin that I can access almost all the parameters at once on my screen in the DAW when I'm making and producing a track. And this makes the hardware work into my way of making music with the DAW. And it definitely that's the kind of thing that I wish more hardware had interfaces like this. Let's check in with the chat before we go. We have our winner. Congratulations to Pavel. You have won the Sound Toys Decapitator. It's an excellent plugin. I use it all the time. Sounds really rich and warm. And let's see what else is going on here. He's really mega super extra happy. Yes, I would be too. So yes, congratulations to you. And I don't know, I guess we're just after 2:00. I think we've done good today. We had a nice conversation, and I really appreciate you coming on and sort of talking about music with me and listening to some of your music, and then talking about a little bit about what you do with the Digitone. And I've had fun.
Thanks. Yeah, me too. Thank you so much.
Right.
For inviting me. Yeah.
Absolutely. And maybe, who knows, going forward, I'm still going to have guests. I've got some really great guests lined up for this month. I might go back to less often having guests every week. It is a big challenge for people to get set up and do the technical thing. It would be good to have more time for that. But I love having guests on this show. It makes it fun for me. And I hope that it makes it more fun and interesting for everybody out there who's watching. Thanks again to all of you who have tuned in and joined the chat. Glad to see a lot of regulars back again. And once more, congrats to Pavel K2, who is the winner of our giveaway this week. We'll be back on Tuesday. Tetro will be doing a call-in show, I believe. So hang around for that next week. And I'll see you next Saturday. Have a good one. Adios.